Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of our new season's Stew and Cocoa podcasts. Today we're joined by Joe Giordano, who very kindly joined us for season 1, where we talked a lot about high finance and charities and jumped about a bit. It was quite entertaining. But obviously today, Joe, obviously still principal at Bargate. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you, Tony, as always.
Yeah, good to see you too. And today you are going to be telling us a little bit about the charity that you're responsible for, or one of your charities, and the charity that you're going to be representing in this podcast. We're going to be talking in a bit about who your nomination is for Inspirational Business Leader for over the COVID period. But before we do, I think it might not be a bad idea to review a little bit about what we talked about in last series podcast and talk about what's important to you in terms of the human effect of this period, since April, May. I think if we can start there for you, Joe.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony, and thanks for inviting me again. The last podcast we talked about finance and the influence of the major wealth funds into the industry. Since then, we've had circa 10 million people furloughed. The industry has taken a big hit. There's unfortunately, a lot of people being made redundant after furlough, and the human cost is just growing. And what concerns me is it's not about today, it's the next 2 years, where construction projects take a long time to incubate, start on site. And it's not just builders, it's the consultants around that, the funders, the lawyers. As much as the government is pumping money into the industry and into society in general just to keep it afloat, circa a quarter of it, 250 billion has been
250 billion by the end of this year is what most analysts are forecasting in terms of government spend.
Which is enormous. It pales into insignificant the national debt, the money we're saving on exiting Europe. Also, that money needs to be found somewhere in the future. How is the government going to generate resources to find that money? Increasing taxes, VAT, capital gains, and also just the human costs, which we don't value at the moment. It's quite hard to value that, where I do personally think people still think they're on holiday. So I met some friends last week and I thought, oh my God, it's August. What's happened to this year? It's been quite a strange year for a lot of people, not seeing loved ones. I also think as I said earlier, the human cost in the next 2 years is going to be enormous. Companies have been using cash flow to keep people afloat, keep people employed, and now the cold hard realization is actually hitting them so far as people have been made redundant. I mean, thousands upon thousands have been made redundant, and where do you put those people in the future, and where do you find those jobs? And I do think interest rates are going to have to rise to meet demand. Then you've got the cost of mortgages, salaries are going to be slow to creep up. It's just a perfect storm next year. And yeah, it's quite frightening, to be very brutally honest with you, Tony, how we're going to survive the next 2 years, because it's going to be 2 years at least.
Yeah, I think you've got some big headline, scary figures there, Joe. Last time we spoke, which was towards the start of the crisis, I think you were fairly optimistic in terms of large sovereign wealth funds, large vehicles, their investment outlook for 2021, 2022. But you were maybe less optimistic about mid-caps and smaller wealth creation vehicles. Can we just tackle that first before we talk about the rest of the stuff?
The big funds are, they've lost hundreds of billions themselves, but they started off with hundreds of billions. So it is a paper exercise. the smaller funds generate a lot of their capital through investors, i.e. you and I, who've got a spare 50,000 or 100,000. Those individuals do not have that liquidity anymore. They're holding on to those 50 to 100,000 and saying, actually, I'm going to keep this in my back pocket for a rainy day, albeit it sits in their bank account earning very, very little return.
At the moment.
Yeah.
At the moment.
At the moment. Well, I do think the cost of money is going to go up.
Yeah.
I also think we're seeing a lot of, on the development finance side, we're seeing a lot of these platforms who are backed by individuals and wealthy individuals are actually now no longer there because those individuals have retracted into their home, a safer environment. In reality, business, the way we generate business and work is actually by building things. If you're going to buy a trophy asset, the only employees are going to, the only consultants are going to be potentially a lawyer, a surveyor, and potentially a funder. If you're building that 100-story tower block, you'd have architects, engineers, plasterers, electricians, the full supply chain. And that generates wealth, it generates business, but it also feeds the supply chain further down the line, i.e. they'll go to restaurants to buy clothes, they'll go to pubs if you're allowed to. So I do think the funds are out there. I also think there's a lot of opportunities out there. A lot of people trying to still think they can make a quick buck. So I think if you've got cash next year, you'll be making a lot of good purchases, to be honest with you.
Okay. So overall, in terms of investment outlook that you're seeing, in terms of the major funds, you still think there's appetite for acquisition?
There's still appetite, yeah.
There's still appetite for acquisition. So that's positive, right? But again, in terms of the mid caps or some of the smaller funds, I know that you talked about urban exposure earlier. Tell us more about
that. I'd rather not, if you don't mind.
All right. One of your red lines.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to say that in terms of, like you've said, in terms of some of the smaller funds, some of the smaller wealth vehicles, they're struggling for liquidity because, like you said, individuals like you or I or smaller investors just would either don't have the liquidity or would rather use that investment for cash in bank.
It's a comfort blanket.
Yeah. Okay.
It's and people need a comfort blanket. We're coming up to Christmas. We've not spent much, but we've also not done much. And I think some of the big funds will be okay. I think the smaller investor type funds will struggle. I also think people are thinking, actually, what's going to happen next year? I'm going to get made redundant. Is that project going to end? There's not that many. Okay, there's HS2, and there's a couple of big schemes, but on the smaller side, do they exist? The smaller developer, it's great, but then you've got to think about mortgage product. Is the mortgage product for these guys to be able to buy those 2-bedroom flats or 1-bedroom flats? So it's just that ramification. And you talk about liquidity. If you're not putting money if people are taking money out of the banks, then the money's not going to be there to allow Treasury to lend to other investors. So it is a vicious circle at the moment. And
I think Joe, you hit the nail on the head for me. If we're going to spend as a nation and borrow to spend circa 250 billion this year, and our experience is reflective of the wealthy Western world and Far East now, that's a lot of borrowing requirement, and that borrowing requirement is going to be chasing the same lenders,
yeah.
And that's got to push up interest rates, isn't it?
Yeah, and the price of money becomes more expensive.
Got to.
But also, you said it yourself. There's the pot is finite. We're just doing QE. We're just printing money. The irony of the whole thing is, we had an election a year ago. The Labour Party was on about borrowing to grow, and the Conservatives have done the same thing in a way to get us out of this situation. It's whether you talk about Sweden, whether the herd effect was the way to do it. I don't know. I don't know how many lives have been saved, how many lives have not been saved. But the economic costs are just frightening. And I think people don't realise what those costs, because unfortunately a lot of people have just buried their heads in the sand, I do think. And they don't realise that 250 billion is going to have to be paid somewhere. It's not today. It's 40 years down the line. It's your children, it's your grandchildren.
I think
That's borrowing today. What happens next year if we have another issue?
yeah,
You
and
can't constantly.
I think Joe, you're absolutely right. We've got 2 or 3 big issues there. I think the first one is, although you can't put a cost on people's lives, ultimately that 250 billion odd could have been spent on hospitals, schools, infrastructure projects, retraining, any sort of public sector investment that could have ended up saving lives, helping lives, generating wealth and generating health, right? Not just for this generation, but for later generations. And like we said, you've got the knock-on effects.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to be worried about.
I think the problem, guys, there's going to be a lot of political standing as well in the future. So, you've got all the parties will say, "Look, guys, look what you've done." Well, actually, guys, one, it was a one-off. It's totally out of character. 2, I do think we've got ourselves into a corner where we're trying to compete with other countries. But then you see what's happening in New Zealand, where that was the model exemplar, and all of a sudden, 100 days later, it's back to square one.
Yeah. I think it's almost turned into a competition as to who can be the best nanny state. Tell us more about, you mentioned the human cost. Tell us more about the human cost for you. What have you noticed?
I've actually seen, bizarrely, a lot of mental health issues, Tony, where there seems to be a laissez-faire, it'll happen. There seems to be a lot of people not motivated anymore. They're not, they're happy to be in their little cozy environment where, they get up in the morning, they got to sit on their sofa, they watch a bit of TV. And I'm thinking, what it's like when it's like coming back from holiday after a week or 2 weeks. This is guys coming back after 4 or 5 months, traveling on public transport again, that person's coughed. Have they got the virus? I think I just think the men, and also children, we forget about the children at school at the moment who are suffering. The mental ramifications, not just you and I are in employment, it's the 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are actually trying to get to school and move. That's 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. And that affects character and persons.
Yeah.
And I think, again, personally, it's difficult to quantify. I think it's all very subjective, but you're hearing the stories about exam grades at the moment. I see the government's done a U-turn at 4 o'clock where it's all going to be teacher assessed and the algorithm's gone away. So it's going to be very hard to measure, but I do think the ramifications are going to be amazing. I just can't. Yeah, and also you start, you hear, did we have to react that quickly? Did we have to react as we needed? Do we get caught up in a wave of euphoria? Of other governments saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and while other countries did their own thing, we got shunted along with the rest of the world.
In a Me Too lemming type exercise.
Yeah.
Talking again about how it's affected human lives that you've seen, I would agree. I've seen, in terms of candidate flow, I've seen a sharp rise in individuals who are expecting to not have to do much work anymore.
Oh, the world of entitlement is frightening.
Yeah, the world of entitlement. I think effectively putting, 3-4 million people on the dole for the last 4 months without any expectation for anything really, I think is going to cause us problems.
Yeah. And also you've got to fund that 4 million unemployment. You've just borrowed a quarter of 250 billion. You're going to have to borrow more money. And also tax receipts are not going to be there because you're not going to be earning, these guys are not paying taxes to go into the central government. So it's that perfect storm. So we're more and more into debt.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a tough 2 years minimum.
Yeah. Right. So importantly now, and turning this into a positive.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your chosen charity. Let's talk about, before we talk about your nominee, let's talk about your chosen charity, why you've chosen the charity, and all about the great work it does.
Yeah. My chosen charity is Veterans Wildlife. I'm chairman and trustee. The charity basically does three things. Basically, we empower veterans, so we help on their transition stage. So we use them predominantly to teach others in the field of preventing wildlife crime, anti-poaching techniques. So we deploy them in various parts of the world where they teach rangers, local people to actually help protect wildlife. Another strand is we provide a PTSD course called the Footprints of Hope, where we use animal-assisted therapy with veterans. And what that does is basically it's a residential course of 8 days. Last year, we flew them to South Africa, and we had the honour of Lord Ashcroft, who gave us a grant to do that. And what that does, it takes the individual and it goes back to basics. So you go back to things we all enjoyed as children, like pottery, painting, we do yoga, and then we do a various psychometric psychotherapy, a mental health course, sort of like examination programs where these guys go and then they use animals to actually, we're all like stroking a dog, it calms us down. And it's understanding what these traumas are and how we can actually use those skills to break through. And then thirdly, we have an education program where we use veterans to go into schools to talk about conservation, anti-poaching. And we've helped hundreds of veterans. We've been going 3.5 years.
And Joe, this is schools in the third and developing world, or this is
UK.
Okay.
So in the UK, so we work with Robin Hood School in the UK, where what we do is we partner with the school in the UK, then we partner with the school in South Africa on other part. So they end up becoming like a twin school. So they talk about conservation. We do a bit of fundraising for them in the South. So we do buy second-hand shoes, pens, pencils, etc., which we ship out. But it's getting to know your culture. This great technology we have, it's using that technology to actually understand it. And actually, you'd be surprised how many schools in Africa don't know about conservation.
Really?
And anti-poaching, yeah.
Really?
So you're teaching them something as well. It's amazing. It's a great, you've got veterans who are, W amputees who've been blown up in Afghanistan, Iraq, and you're giving them that hope again. So it's about helping them on transition and saying, look, guys, you can work, you can carry on. And it's giving them that, what they lack is, and it's that interaction, being part of a team again. And that's the beauty of that. These guys end up becoming part of a little regiment themselves where they help each other and support each other. And they take that into life. And we help write CVs. We do a bit of mentoring and just open doors for them. You get the odd email, Joe, do you know someone in construction? I introduced you to Chris. So it's that random, but to me, it's been able, we're very lucky. I'm extremely lucky. We help people, and all it takes is an email, and for them it's massive. For you and me, it's just sending an email to a mate of 20 odd years and seeing if you can help.
Yeah,
it's a positive. And going back to COVID, and I hope, and I said that in my last chat we had, I hope COVID makes us better people, a bit more compassionate, and actually it's good to help people without a return.
So essentially what the charity does in assisting veterans who have been injured, and that's veterans who might have been injured physically or emotionally. Yeah. You're kind of combining conservation, rehabilitation, and earth care sustainability in not only rehabilitating your vet, but also in trying to educate next gen.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That is fantastic. Okay.
We have some great ambassadors. So ambassadors are Jason Foxy of Who Dares Wins.
Jason Fox of Who Dares Wins.
Yep. Aldo Kane, who does a lot of TV. Rosie Stancer, the explorer, who is the Queen's cousin.
Yeah.
Our trustees are, I'm one. James Glancy, who won the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross, who's a conservationist. And Princess Tessie d'Antony of Luxembourg is one of our trustees.
Wow.
So, and patrons include Director of Veterans Affairs and a couple of generals.
So you're an esteemed company.
steam being the operative word. And, did I say that? I can't say that. So we've deployed in the Kruger, in Namibia, in Tanzania, obviously South Africa, into Belize. We're looking at Southeast Asia, and it's not just rhinos, and it's just the whole ecosystem. We're looking at sharks, shark fin issues. We're looking at the issues of drugs in America and anti-poaching, because a lot of drug cartels have to deforest large areas of land to build to grow drugs. So there's an issue there regarding anti-poaching, and also this current potential pandemic, courtesy of the pangolin. So we're looking at pangolin issues as well.
Interesting.
So it's a fascinating, but it's creating a support network for a lot of people.
Now, obviously, you've seen the podcast we did with the Movement Centre. One of their key issues in the current crisis is how they generate money. How do they? How have you found how have you found trying to fundraise in the current situation?
Personally, I've put some money into the charity because I believe in it. Also, we've ramped up our grant applications to various foundations, which has been very successful. It's very hard to fundraise and do treks and challenges, etc. So we usually do a dinner, which I think you were invited to last year. Unfortunately, you couldn't make it.
Yes.
We've had to cancel that one this year. But again, we've flipped that as well, Tony. Insofar as last year it was a gala dinner. This year it's more about business. So you create a room full of business leaders. So it's not about the razzmatazz. It's actually saying, look, guys, come to our event and network. Try and generate
business leader network. And how do we manage to do that under the current COVID situation, with the current restrictions?
Well, the dinner we've had to cancel because of restaurants. However, our next event is Clay Pigeon Shooting Day at Holland and Holland, which is going to be on the 1st of October. Tickets are still available.
Nice.
And we've been able to do that one because it's social distancing. We've got, I think we're up to 62 people.
But it's outdoors. That always helps, doesn't it? It's outdoors.
Outdoors. So, and it's good because I think a lot of people are just tired. So it's a way of getting rid of aggression, shooting clays with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And we have, I'll be honest, we have a number of large, big name architects have taken teams for their clients, a number of contractors, lawyers.
Anybody you'd like to plug in terms of big name architects?
We've got HLM are coming, 3D Reed. We've got a couple of construction companies. So
who's coming?
Graham came last year. We've beaten up Graham. We've got Graham Construction.
And now, Joe, who specifically at Graham? Let's see if we can get them to do a podcast.
Rob Joyce.
Joyce.
I can connect to Rob. So, but it's also, again, it's been more business orientated. So for them, it's do a morning shoot, a lovely barbecue, because it's a 5-star barbecue. And then the afternoon is networking. So, there's a couple of developers coming, a couple of funders, lawyers, accountants, a real mixed group, but they all need each other because that's how they generate business.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And we've been able to do social distancing. And the good thing about it is it's sort of something called unrestricted funding. And that as a person who gets involved in charities, a lot of donors want their money specifically allocated to a particular project. And then you struggle to pay things like overheads, like accountants' fees, IT costs. Yeah. So the event is actually an unrestricted event. So the money we can use actually can pay for the day-to-day run of the charity, albeit the charity costs us $8 or $9 grand a year to run. Not much. In fact, it's going to be a lot less next year because they're going to use my offices as a space. So it's a fun day and lots of laughter.
So in terms of how you've managed to deal with the challenges of fundraising, i.e. not being able to do gala dinners, i.e. cash drying up anyway, we've come out with this interesting business leader unrestricted event, networking piece where we're getting people outside, we're getting people, it's obviously got a business spin on it, and we've managed to plug some supporters, which is good. And I will definitely come and join you. because that sounds A, like fun, and B, really useful.
You want to take a team?
How long's it? How big's a team for shooting? I know nothing about it.
6 people. Starts at 9. Starts at 8:30 in the morning. Bacon rolls, teas, cakes, coffees, bit of networking. Mornings shooting with a great instructor.
And where is it? You said Holland and Holland.
Pinner.
Pinner. Ah, Pinner. All right. So that kind of West London-y, that way.
Northwest. Northwest.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll put you down for a team of 6.
Put it down for a team of 6, Joe.
I'm going to put you down as a team. I'm going to write it on my hand.
I've done it now. All right. So we've got some fundamentally. There are ways to fundraise. We've been a bit innovative. We're working within the restrictions. We're doing something a bit different, and it's going to make some money.
And it's important because I'll be honest with you, Tony. You talked about motivation. It's been a dart for a lot of people, and I've got a photograph of a guy who was on our PTSD course, and he's on my computer if I need it. And this guy lost both his legs, and you think, you know what? Yeah, my life's not that bad.
Yeah,
and it's important that we realise that actually we're all in a good place.
Listen, perspective. We all need a bit of perspective. Massive. Everybody needs a yardstick now and again to come and
But I tell you, you also need, Tony, some friends to talk to where you can chew the fat without judgment. And I hope this COVID is actually, it's not about work. It's about just mates and helping each other without question. I think we've become too insular. We hide behind social media. I think it's about, we need to go back to catching up and talking rubbish for
reconnecting. Okay.
Yeah.
And on that, so we've talked about your proposed charity.
Yeah.
We've managed to plug HLM, 3D Read and Graham as fantastic businesses. Obviously, us is a fantastic business for taking another 6 slots off of you.
Yeah.
Right, over to Inspirational Business Leader. So for you, your nomination for our award, who would it go to, Joe?
I think it needs to go to you, Toni Camisotti, for bringing us all together.
Yeah, that is hilarious.
Why?
Well, you did mention that you might do this earlier, and I honestly thought you were joking. So again, we can cut that. We can cut that. So Joe, over to Inspirational Business Leader Award. Who is your nomination?
I'd like to nominate you, Toni Camisotti.
Wow. You said it.
The reason being,
you got to mean it.
The reason being, Toni, I think you've done a bit like me. You've gone out of your way to bring people together. You've actually helped the industry. I think you've created some fun in the industry in the last 6 months because I think that's what we've needed. I think you created a lovely little environment to discuss matters and issues in an open forum. Hello? Sorry, I don't know what happened there. In an open forum where... What?
That was just beautifully cut out at just the right time.
Good. If I go back in an open forum where people are prepared to just have a very open conversation about issues in the industry, which not many people are afraid to do because they feel they get judged. You do it in a relaxed way. I also think it's a positive. I think it's important what you're doing. I think we need more of these. Historically, I've done it myself where a bit like you, I like bringing groups of people together where they have a very discussing quite open and relaxed without fear of judgment. I think that's important. I think we live in a world where we post something and people immediately judge you or find criticism. And most people are afraid to do that. And I think these forums are great because it's such a broad spectrum of conversation. And it's something for everyone.
Oh, do you know, Joe, that's do you know what? That's very kind. And just to recap on that, your nomination for Inspirational Business Leader of the Year Award is me.
It's Antonio Camisotti.
Antonio Camisotti. And if obviously we get the most likes and shares, the £1,000 proceeds will be going to Veterans for Wildlife.
Thank you.
Which is a fantastic charity. Again, you can definitely put me down for 6 for shooting. I think I've been shooting once.
No, be careful. Don't say 6 for shooting because you're going to take a team of 6 shooting, not shooting 6 people.
Yeah. Bad employees. So we'll look forward to joining you there out in October with bacon rolls and +4s obligatory. No.
That's golf.
No.
That's golf.
+4 shooting? No,
that's golf.
No, that's golf. Right. All right, well, look, Joe Giordano of Bargate, thank you for your time.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Thanks for your time, pal. See you soon.
Bye.
Stay safe. Bye.